What would make a quiet Hollywood night turn into a moment that still echoes across history? More than 50 years later, one question remains. How could words spoken by one man lead others to commit unimaginable violence? In the summer of 1969, Los Angeles was a city of contrast. Music, film, and counterculture were reshaping America's identity, especially in California. Yet beneath the surface of creativity and freedom, there was also confusion, anger, and a search for meaning. It was in this atmosphere that Charles Manson gathered a small group of followers, mostly young and vulnerable, promising purpose, belonging, and answers to a world he claimed was on the edge of collapse. Manson did not look powerful in a traditional sense. He had no wealth, no political influence, no official authority. What he had was control over people. Through isolation, constant reinforcement, and manipulation, he built loyalty that blurred the line between belief and obedience. Over time, his followers stopped questioning him. His words became commands, and his ideas became their reality. On the night of August 8, 1969, that control turned deadly. A group of Manson's followers went to a home in the Hollywood Hills. Inside were people living ordinary lives, unaware that they had been selected as symbols in a twisted plan. By the next morning, 5 people were dead, including actress Sharon Tate, who was pregnant at the time. The shock was immediate and nationwide. This was not a robbery. It was not personal revenge. It was something far more disturbing. The following night, the violence continued at another location. Again, innocent people were killed. Fear spread quickly, not only because of the brutality, but because no one could clearly understand why it happened. Messages left behind seemed designed to confuse and terrify. Los Angeles, a city used to bright lights and big dreams, suddenly felt unsafe and deeply shaken. As investigators worked through the chaos, the picture slowly became clearer. Witness statements, physical evidence, and testimony from within the group began to connect the crimes to Manson and his followers. One key figure, who had been present but did not participate directly in the killings, chose to cooperate. Her testimony helped prosecutors explain how orders were given, how loyalty was enforced, and how fear and devotion kept people in line. The legal challenge was significant. Charles Manson did not personally kill anyone during those nights, yet prosecutors argued that he was the architect of the crimes, the one who directed others to act. They presented the case as a conspiracy, showing that without Manson's influence and commands, the murders would not have happened. The jury agreed. In 1971, Manson and several of his followers were convicted. Death sentences were issued, later changed to life imprisonment after changes in California law. Justice, in a legal sense, had been delivered, but emotionally and socially, the case was far from over. For the families of the victims, the pain did not end with the verdict. Loss does not follow a courtroom schedule. Birthdays, anniversaries, and everyday moments continue to remind them of lives cut short. Public attention, while sometimes supportive, could also reopen wounds. The homes where the murders occurred became symbols, raising difficult questions about memory, respect, and exploitation. Over the years, the case has been told and retold in books, films, and documentaries. Each retelling brings renewed interest, but also renewed debate. Some focus on Manson himself, trying to understand his psychology. Others argue that too much attention on the perpetrator risks turning a criminal into a myth, while the victims fade into the background. Another layer of controversy comes from disagreement over motive. Prosecutors described an apocalyptic belief system, often referred to as helter-skelter, suggesting that Manson wanted to spark chaos. Some later writers and researchers have questioned whether this explanation fully captures the truth, pointing to inconsistencies and alternative interpretations. However, the convictions remain, and the courts accepted the prosecution's theory at the time. Public reaction to the case reveals deep divisions. Many people express strong empathy, focusing on the victims and their families. They see the case as a reminder of how fragile safety can be and how easily innocence can be destroyed. Others respond with anger, rejecting any discussion that appears to soften judgment of those responsible. There is also a smaller, more analytical response. Some ask how manipulation works, why people follow destructive leaders, and how similar patterns appear in other groups throughout history. This perspective does not excuse the crimes, but seeks to prevent future harm by understanding warning signs, isolation, absolute loyalty, and the silencing of doubt. The case also forces society to look at its relationship with violence as entertainment. When stories are consumed for curiosity or shock, it raises ethical concerns. Where is the line between education and exploitation? How do we remember without sensationalizing? These questions have no simple answers, but they remain essential. Charles Manson died in prison decades later, never released. Several of his followers also spent their lives behind bars. For some, that feels like closure. For others, closure is impossible. The cultural impact of the case continues, influencing discussions about cults, criminal responsibility, and media responsibility. Perhaps the most lasting lesson is not about one man, but about influence. The Manson case shows how dangerous unchecked power can be, even without weapons or status. Words, when combined with vulnerability and belief, can become tools of destruction. Recognizing that truth is uncomfortable, but necessary. Today, when we look back at 1969, it is easy to see it as history. But the dynamics that led to these crimes have not disappeared. Charismatic leaders still exist. People still search for belonging. And the responsibility to think critically, to question authority, and to protect one another remains as important as ever. So as we reflect on this case, we are left with more than facts and verdicts. We are left with a mirror, asking us to examine how society responds to fear, fame, and fascination. Do we center the victims? Do we learn from the warning signs? And do we choose empathy over spectacle? What do you think about this case and its lasting impact? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can uncover more stories together. This content is compiled and analyzed based on publicly available information and open discussions.